The July wind felt like a scorching wall, suffocating and oppressive. I held Sandy's hand as we pushed our way out of the crowded market. Sweat drenched my back, and the cheap t-shirt clung uncomfortably to my skin. Sandy held up her nearly melted ice cream cone, her little face smeared with cream, and looked up at me. "Mommy, are we having tomato scrambled eggs for dinner tonight?" I smiled and nodded, pulling a crumpled tissue from my pocket to wipe her face clean. Just then, a black Bentley pulled up silently before us. Its body gleamed like polished steel, standing out in this chaotic, dilapidated neighborhood like a king who'd stumbled into the slums. Instinctively, I pulled Sandy behind me and watched warily. The car door swung open. A pair of immaculately polished custom-made leather shoes touched the ground first. Then I saw James. 7 years had passed, yet time seemed to have been especially kind to him. He was still as handsome as ever, even more so now, with an added air of mature masculinity, a quiet, commanding presence. A perfectly tailored suit hugged his upright frame, while the Patek Philippe on his wrist glinted harshly in the sunlight. At that moment, my heart felt as though an invisible hand had clamped down on it, causing it to abruptly stop beating. How could he be here? His gaze settled on me, as if appraising a dusty relic, tinged with curiosity and detachment. I clenched Sandy's hand so tightly my nails nearly dug into my own flesh. Then his eyes slowly drifted downward, landing on Sandy behind me. At a glance, his once calm, unruffled gaze was instantly swept by a raging storm. That shock, that utter disbelief, felt like being punched square in the face. Sandy felt a little scared under his gaze and quietly hid behind me, peeking out only with her big, dark eyes. She watched him with equal parts curiosity and timidity. Those eyes were the spitting image of James's. The air froze. The cries of street vendors and the honking of cars seemed to fade away in an instant. All I could hear was my own heart pounding like a drum, beat after beat, thudding against my fragile eardrums. His Adam's apple bobbed as he walked toward me step by step. Each step felt like he was stepping on my heart. "Lola." He spoke, his voice deeper and rougher than it had been 7 years ago. I forced myself to lift my head, meet his gaze, and manage a stiff smile. "James, it's been a long time. Polite as strangers." He ignored my polite remarks, his gaze fixed intently on Sandy behind me, his tone so certain it brooked no argument. "This is my child." Not a question, but a statement. Those words exploded in my mind like a bolt of lightning. All my pretense, all my composure, crumbled in an instant. A tidal wave of hatred and resentment surged from the depths of my heart, nearly drowning me. Yet I laughed until tears nearly spilled from my eyes. "Sir, you've mistaken me for someone else." I enunciated each word deliberately, summoning every ounce of strength to keep my voice steady and clear. "My daughter's father has been dead for years." His expression darkened instantly, his eyes churning with a dangerous storm. "Say that again?" 2 black-clad bodyguards immediately closed in behind him, their towering figures casting 2 shadows that completely enveloped Sandy and me. Sandy let out a startled cry and clung tightly to my legs. "Mommy, I'm scared." My daughter's cries pierced my heart like a sharp spike. I snapped my head up, my eyes blazing with an icy glare I'd never before possessed, fixing it on James. "What do you think you're doing? Threatening a child, is that the best you've got?" My accusation left him momentarily stunned. He looked at Sandy, her eyes brimming with tears, his expression complex. Finally, he waved his hand, signaling his bodyguards to step back. The tension eased slightly. He pulled a business card from his suit pocket and handed it to me. It was a simply designed card with gold foil stamping, starkly out of place in the surroundings. I didn't take it. He didn't seem annoyed, instead, he slipped the card into the pocket of my t-shirt. His fingertips accidentally brushed against my skin, and the icy sensation made me flinch. "Come to my office tomorrow," he said, his voice reverting to its usual commanding tone, leaving no room for argument. "Let's discuss child custody." With that, he gave Sandy one last piercing look before turning and getting into the car. The black Bentley sped away, leaving only the lingering scent of exhaust in its wake. I froze in place, my body growing numb with cold. Sandy was still sniffling softly in my arms. She lifted her head, her reddened eyes brimming with confusion and fear. "Mommy, why was that man so mean?" I crouched down, wrapping my arms tightly around her small frame as if I could press her into my very bones. I didn't know how to answer her. The business card in my pocket felt like a red-hot branding iron, burning my chest with pain. I thought we'd never see each other again in this lifetime. I thought my daughter and I could keep living our quiet life like this forever. But James's arrival shattered my stagnant life like a boulder crashing through still waters. Sandy and I lived in an old apartment building in the urban village. Our 70-square-meter rental had peeling walls and second-hand furniture we'd scoured flea markets for. Back home, I locked the door as fast as I could. Only when my back pressed against the cold door did I feel my legs go weak, barely able to stand. Sandy had been scared by the commotion earlier that day and was listless all evening, going to bed early. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching her peaceful sleeping face, my heart turning to ice. 7 years ago, I had been just like her, alone, dragging a suitcase, escaping from the Goo family's gilded cage. Back then, I was carrying Sandy in my womb and penniless. It was Jenny, James's mother, that haughty socialite, who personally swept me out the door. I will forever remember the look she gave me then, as if I were a filthy stray dog that had accidentally wandered into her garden. She flung a forged infertility report in my face. The thin paper felt like a razor blade, slicing my dignity to shreds. "In our family, we don't keep hens that don't lay eggs. Take this money and get as far away as possible. Never show your face to James again. A woman like you isn't fit to be my son's wife." Those cruel, vicious words pierced my heart like poisoned thorns. 7 years on, they still sting at the slightest touch. I didn't take her money. I walked away with nothing but the last shred of my dignity, the one she'd trampled underfoot. I thought that was the end for James and me. Unexpectedly, fate played such a cruel joke. Knock, knock, knock. The abrupt knocking interrupted my thoughts. My body stiffened as I peered through the peephole. A stranger in a suit stood there. It was James's people. My heart sank. I didn't open the door. The man was patient, knocking a few more times before speaking through it. "Lola, I'm James's assistant. I mean you no harm. James asked me to bring something over for the child." I replied coldly, "We don't need it." The assistant outside the door seemed taken aback by my attitude, paused for a moment, then continued, "Lola, James was just trying to help." I said we don't need it. I practically shouted. His kindness? His kindness is sending bodyguards to surround us and scare my daughter to tears? Silence fell outside the door. After a while, I heard something being placed on the floor, followed by footsteps receding into the distance. I waited a long time, making sure he was truly gone, before opening the door just a crack. A mountain of shopping bags piled up by the door. The latest Barbie dolls, the priciest imported snacks, and all sorts of designer children's clothing. On top lay a bank card. Any one of these items cost more than my monthly rent. What is this? Charity? Or are you using money to tell me I'm incapable of giving Sandy a decent life? An uncontrollable rage flared up inside me. I grabbed those shopping bags and threw them all into the hallway trash can like a madman. Along with that bank card. After doing all this, I leaned against the wall, gasping for breath, while tears streamed down my face despite myself. Humiliation, rage, and resentment, all these emotions flooded over me like a tidal wave. My phone rang. It was my best friend Zara calling on video. I wiped away my tears and composed myself before answering. "Lola, how are you and Sandy doing? Why didn't you reply to my messages today?" On the video call, Zara was wearing a face mask. Seeing my expression, she immediately sensed something was wrong. "What's wrong with you? Why are your eyes so red? Did someone pick on you?" I couldn't hold back any longer and told her everything that happened today. After hearing it, Zara was so furious she jumped straight up from the sofa, even knocking the face mask off her face. That bastard James. How dare he show his face? Has he forgotten how that old hag humiliated you 7 years ago? Now he sees his daughter looks like him and thinks he can just come pick the low-hanging fruit. Who does he think he is? You have the nerve to talk about custody? Does he even deserve it? For 7 years, you were the one carrying Sandy to the hospital when she had a fever. You begged and pleaded with the restaurant owner for time off to attend Sandy's parent-teacher conferences. Where was this so-called father of hers? Every word Zara spoke cut deep into my heart. Yes, these past 7 years, he had been the lofty president of the GU Group, a titan of the business world, adored by thousands. And I was merely a single mother struggling to make ends meet, toiling at the bottom of society. We've long been worlds apart. Lola, don't be afraid. Zara's voice softened, yet held an unwavering resolve. Didn't he tell you to come to the company tomorrow? Go. I'll go with you. I'll see just how he intends to talk. If he wants to take my goddaughter, he'll have to step over my dead body first. Watching my friend in the video, her righteous indignation for me, finally brought a flicker of warmth to my frozen heart. With her there, I somehow felt less afraid. The next day, I still went to James's company. Not because I feared him, but because I couldn't run away. Sandy is my absolute limit, no one touches her. Zara took a day off just to pick me up in her flashy red sports car. She even forced me to put on makeup and change into a business suit she brought along. Remember, Lola, you're not begging him today, you're negotiating with him. Don't lose your edge. Even if you're scared to death inside, put on a face like you're the queen of the world. I stared at the unfamiliar face in the mirror and took a deep breath. The headquarters of GU Group towered over the city's bustling CBD center. Its glass curtain walls reflected the harsh sunlight, casting an intimidating aura. I had seen this building countless times in financial magazines, yet never imagined I would one day step inside. The receptionist, likely having received notice, immediately flashed a professional smile upon seeing me and escorted me to the executive elevator. As the elevator ascended smoothly, the polished interior walls reflected my figure and Zara's. I noticed my own hands, tightly clutching the hem of my shirt. Zara took my hand and gave me a reassuring look. The CEO's office was on the top floor. Beyond the massive floor-to-ceiling windows lay half the city's skyline. James sat behind the expansive desk, head bowed over documents, his posture commanding and dignified, like a sovereign ruling over his realm. Hearing the sound, he looked up. His gaze swept past me and landed on Zara beside me, his brow furrowing slightly. I only called Lola. His tone carried a hint of displeasure. Zara retorted without missing a beat, I'm Lola's lawyer and confidant. I have the right to be present at all her important negotiations. James said nothing more and motioned for us to sit down. He leaned back slightly in the comfortable leather seat, his fingers interlaced on the table, his gaze sharp as an eagle's. Why did you throw away last night's stuff? He asked without preamble. I met his eyes, my voice quiet but clear, because we don't need it. He seemed to chuckle softly, a hint of mockery in his voice. Don't need it? Lola, I know where you live and what you do for a living. Can you afford to support her on your $3,000 you want a month? Can you give her the best education, the best life? Every word he spoke felt like a knife, stabbing precisely into my pain. Yes, I'm poor. I can't give Sandy a life of luxury. But I've given her all the love I have. These past 7 years, we've been each other's only support. No matter how hard or difficult things got, I never felt like we couldn't make it through. Whether I can afford to raise her is my own business, none of yours. My coldness seemed to enrage him. He stood up, walked before me, his towering figure radiating an intense sense of pressure. None of yours? She's my James's daughter. She carries my blood. Lola, I don't have time for your games of playing hard to get. He pulled 2 documents from the drawer and slammed them onto the coffee table. 2 choices. First, give up custody of Sandy. Here's 10 million, enough to live comfortably for the rest of your life. Second, remarry me and give Sandy a complete family. I stared at the custody transfer agreement and the remarriage contract, finding it all utterly ridiculous. So in his eyes, everything could be solved with money and a piece of paper. Emotions, dignity, 7 years of suffering, none of it matters. I laughed until my shoulders shook. James, do you think money makes you special? Who do you think you are? Thinking you can do whatever you want? Let me tell you, I wouldn't choose either of those options. Sandy is my daughter, and she has nothing to do with you. If you think you can buy our bond with your filthy money, you're dreaming. My voice grew louder and louder until I was practically shouting. 7 years of pent-up resentment and anger erupted completely in that moment. Zara stood up and stepped in front of me. James, get this straight, Lola is Sandy's sole guardian. You have no right to interfere with her decisions. If you harass them again, we'll see you in court. James's face darkened to a terrifying shade. He was probably being berated like this for the first time, and by 2 women he utterly despised. The air in the office felt thick enough to cut with a knife. Just then, the office door swung open. A woman dressed in a Chanel suit, her makeup flawless, stepped inside. She spotted us, paused for a moment, then walked over to James and affectionately hooked her arm through his. James, I heard you brought 2 ladies over. Is this a business meeting? Her voice was sweet and coy, yet the look she shot my way was pure scrutiny and hostility. I recognized her. She was Ivy, the daughter of Yunqing's wealthiest man. She was also featured in the financial news as James's current fiancée. James's expression seemed slightly awkward, but he didn't push her away. What brings you here? Ivy smiled and said, I came to bring you lunch. She paused, her gaze lingering on me for a moment, then suddenly seemed to realize something. Oh, I remember now, aren't you James's ex-wife? She deliberately drew out the word ex-wife, her tone dripping with undisguised contempt and smugness. In that moment, I felt like a clown. Here I was, hysterically arguing with him, while he already had a suitable, glamorous fiancée. What was I? Just an untimely relic from the past, burdened with baggage. My heart died completely in that moment. I grabbed Zara, who was about to say something, and turned to leave. Let's go. Another word would only be inviting humiliation. Stepping out of the GU building, the blinding sunlight beat down on me, yet I felt not a shred of warmth. Zara stomped her feet beside me in fury. What does that Ivy think she is? Acting like she's the empress. I said nothing, only gave a self-deprecating chuckle. Perhaps, in everyone's eyes, she really was the empress. And I'm nothing but a loser who tried to ride someone else's coattails only to get kicked to the curb. The weight of life descended faster and harder than James ever did. The moment I got home, the restaurant manager called. On the other end of the line, the manager's voice trailed off awkwardly, betraying his discomfort. Lola, you don't need to come in tomorrow. My heart sank. I pressed him, why? Manager, did I do something wrong? No, the manager hastily denied. It's someone higher up who called in, saying your private life is unscrupulous, that you have an illegitimate daughter, damaging the restaurant's image. Illegitimate daughter. Those 3 words felt like a slap, stinging my face. I don't even have to think to know who did it. Jenny. No one else would resort to such vicious tactics against me. 7 years on, she's still just as scheming and ruthless. After hanging up, I sat on the cold floor hugging my knees, overcome by a wave of despair unlike any I'd ever felt. Without a job, how would I pay next month's rent? How would I cover Sandy's tuition? My life felt like it had looped back to that desperate rainy night 7 years ago. James had calculated my predicament perfectly. The next afternoon, the kindergarten teacher called to say Sandy's father had already picked her up. I was frantically submitting resumes online when I heard the news. My mind went blank with a sudden buzzing sensation. How dare he? How dare he pick up my daughter without my permission? I raced toward the kindergarten like a madwoman, my heart pounding wildly, my hands and feet icy cold. I couldn't bear to imagine what I'd do if James had hidden Sandy away. When I arrived at the kindergarten gate, panting and out of breath, the scene that greeted me left me speechless. James was crouched down in front of Sandy. In his hands was a huge, exquisitely packaged princess doll, the latest model featured on TV. Sandy had been asking for it for ages, but I'd never been able to bring myself to buy it for her. At first, Sandy was a little scared and shyly kept her distance. But a child's nature couldn't resist the lure of a beloved toy. She reached out her small hand and cautiously touched the doll's pretty dress. James's face wore a gentle smile I'd never seen before. "Do you like it? Just call me Daddy, and it's yours." His voice carried a gentle persuasiveness. The afterglow of the setting sun bathed them both, a tall, handsome man and a delicate little girl. The scene held an almost touching harmony of paternal affection and filial devotion. And I, like a disheveled outsider. Seeing me, James stood up, the smile fading from his face as he resumed his usual coldness. Sandy, upon seeing me, immediately dropped her doll and threw herself into my arms. "Mommy." I clutched my daughter tightly, glaring at James, my voice trembling. "Who gave you permission to pick her up?" He replied matter-of-factly, "I'm her father." "Who needs permission to pick up my own daughter from school?" "You're not." I screamed. "You have no right to be her father. In these 7 years, have you ever fulfilled your duty as a father for even a single day?" My outburst seemed to deeply upset him. He frowned. "Lola, have you had enough? I just wanted to take her out for a meal and buy her some clothes. Look at what you've turned her into. Skinny as a bean sprout." His words cut into my heart like a blunt knife, slice by slice. "Yes, I have no money. I can't afford to treat Sandy to fancy meals every day or buy her new clothes daily. But I've given her everything I possibly could. I work dawn to dusk every day just so she can eat her fill, stay warm, and go to kindergarten happily like other children. Yet in his eyes, all my sacrifices and hard work are worthless. I don't need your fake kindness." I hugged Sandy and turned to leave, unwilling to say another word to him. "Lola," he called after me, a hint of weariness in his voice. "I'll ask you one last time, are you really not going to consider my proposal? For Sandy's sake, you won't even compromise once?" I stopped in my tracks without turning back. "My compromise is nothing but a joke in your eyes and your mother's." With that, I walked into the twilight without looking back. Back home, watching Sandy clutching that expensive doll as if it were her most treasured possession, I felt a mix of emotions. Blood ties are truly a remarkable thing. Even among strangers, even those who've never shared a moment together, that innate sense of closeness seems impossible to erase. I began to fear. I feared that the daughter I'd fought tooth and nail to protect for 6 years would be easily snatched away by James with money and sweet talk. When it rains, it pours. Just as I was fretting over work, Sandy suddenly fell ill. In the middle of the night, she developed a high fever, coughing until her little face turned crimson, her breath hot and ragged. Terrified, I scooped her up and rushed her to the nearest community hospital. After examining my daughter, the doctor's expression turned grave. "Acute pneumonia. It's serious. She must be admitted immediately." My mind went blank, my only thought was saving my child. But when the admission notice and payment slip were handed to me, I was utterly stunned. That long string of numbers felt like a colossal mockery. I emptied every last cent from my pockets, maxed out my only credit card, and still fell far short. Standing before the payment window, I watched the queue of people and felt the strange stares around me. My limbs grew numb with cold, and I felt utterly helpless. For the first time, I hated my poverty and powerlessness so intensely. I didn't even have the ability to keep my child alive and healthy. I called Zara, and without a word, she immediately transferred money to me. But it still wasn't enough. Just as I was at my wit's end, ready to call relatives I hadn't spoken to in years and swallow my pride to borrow money, a doctor in a white coat found me. "Are you Sandy's family?" James has already made arrangements. The child has been transferred to the VIP ward, and we've brought in the city's top pediatric specialist for consultation. You needn't worry about the costs. I stood frozen in place, unable to respond for a long while. James? James? How could he know? I rushed to the VIP ward area and sure enough, at the end of the corridor, I saw that familiar figure. He was leaning against the wall, a cigarette held between his fingers, unlit. The corridor lights cast a long shadow across his form, lending him an air of melancholy. Seeing me, he stubbed out his cigarette and stood up straight. "How's Sandy?" I stared at him, my throat dry, unable to utter a word. How dare he ask about my daughter with that tone of entitlement? These past 7 years, whenever she fell ill or felt down, where was he? Yet the reality is, he effortlessly solved problems I couldn't handle. With his money, he paved a broad highway to health for my daughter. And I, with nothing to offer but my pitiful self-respect, was utterly crushed by a profound sense of helplessness. He saw my vulnerability and closed in step by step. "Lola, do you see? This is reality. Your so-called integrity and dignity are worthless when my daughter's health is at stake. Move in. I prepared an apartment for you and Sandy. It's close to the hospital, making it easier to care for her." His voice carried a cruel undertone. He was stating facts. I couldn't argue with that. Through the glass window of the hospital room, I watched Sandy lying in bed, hooked up to N4, sleeping restlessly. My heart ached unbearably. For her sake, what else could I not give up? My dignity? 7 years ago, Jenny had already trampled it into dust. I closed my eyes as tears slid down my cheeks, hot and stinging. "Fine," I heard my own voice, hoarse and dry, filled with humiliation. "I agree." James's face showed no triumphant joy, only a fleeting, complex emotion. He probably felt that forcing me to submit this way was unfair. But so what? He won. From the moment we reunited, I was destined to lose everything. In the end, I moved into the apartment James had prepared, taking Sandy with me. It was a meticulously decorated, spacious apartment, a world apart from my shabby rented room. Yet living here, I felt like a caged canary, each breath suffocating with the weight of confinement. Sandy recovered remarkably quickly. Thanks to the best medical care and James's almost daily visits and companionship, her little face gradually regained its color, and she grew increasingly affectionate toward him. Sometimes, when I watch them playing together, father and daughter, I feel a momentary blur. It's as if we were the normal family. But whenever Jenny's harsh face flashes through my mind, all that warmth shatters instantly. Sure enough, the peaceful days didn't last long before Jenny came knocking. She didn't come in person, instead, she sent her assistant with an invitation. The Gu family was hosting a dinner party, and she especially invited us, mother and daughter, to attend. I stared at the gold-embossed invitation, a cold laugh rising in my throat. This was a trap, a warning shot fired by her to this ungrateful ex-daughter-in-law. I'd intended to decline, but then James called me personally. "My mother, she just wants to see Sandy." His tone carried a hint of pleading. "Just do it for me, okay?" I fell silent. I couldn't tell if he genuinely failed to see his mother's malicious intent or if he was simply blinded by filial piety. In the end, I agreed. Because I knew that as long as James and I were still entangled, I would have to face this sooner or later. On the day of the family dinner, I dressed Sandy in her most beautiful princess dress, while I chose the simplest, most plain dress for myself. As I stepped into the familiar villa of the Gu family, my palms were drenched in cold sweat. The living room was packed with guests, their elegant attire and stylish hairstyles creating a sea of glamour. Each person wore a lavish gown or tuxedo, their faces adorned with perfectly composed smiles. My arrival felt like a drop of cold water splashing into a boiling pot of oil. All eyes instantly turned to Sandy and me. Some gazes were curious, some probing, some scornful, some dismissive. Jenny, dressed in a bejeweled qipao and surrounded by a group of wealthy ladies, looked like an empress sitting high above them. Spotting me, she flashed a fake smile and beckoned. "Oh, Lola's here. Come sit with us." She seated me at the smallest table at the very back, as if I were some insignificant distant relative. I didn't care. I just wanted to eat this meal in peace and then get Sandy out of this trouble spot. But Jenny clearly wasn't going to let me off that easily. After 3 rounds of drinks, she suddenly stood up, picked up the microphone, and captured everyone's attention. "Today, at this family gathering, I have an announcement to make." She paused, her gaze like a poisoned arrow, shooting straight at me. "As many of you may know, our James had a brief marriage 7 years ago. That young woman, due to health reasons, was unable to have children. Yet today, she returned with a 6-year-old child." No sooner had she finished speaking than the room erupted in commotion. All eyes turned on me like knives, piercing me simultaneously. I felt the blood drain from my face in an instant. Holding Sandy, who was trembling in my arms, my body stiffened like stone. Jenny continued her performance. She took a document folder from her assistant, pulled out a sheet of paper, and held it high. "This is the diagnosis issued by the city center hospital back then. It states in black and white, she, Lola, is congenitally infertile. Now, I just want to ask Lola." Her voice shot up, filled with venomous accusation. "This child of unknown origin, whose bastard is she? What on earth were you thinking, bringing her back to get close to our James?" Boom. My world spun. I watched the hideous old woman on stage, observed the guests around me pointing and whispering, and saw James sitting at the head table, his face equally shocked, even tinged with a hint of doubt. My heart grew colder, inch by inch. I couldn't defend myself. This was her way of showing me who was boss. She wanted to trample my character, my dignity, and all my hard work and integrity over these past 7 years underfoot in front of everyone, crushing them into nothingness. I could even feel James's gaze upon me. Gone was the previous intensity and certainty in his eyes, replaced instead by a hint of wavering. Yes, the diagnosis was there in black and white. He would doubt it too, wouldn't he? He would also believe that I betrayed him 7 years ago, and now I'm trying to return with a bastard child to extort him. What breaks the camel's back is never the last straw. It's every single one. His suspicion is the heaviest straw of all. A metallic sweetness surged in my throat, and darkness swirled before my eyes. Just as I was about to collapse, Sandy in my arms suddenly summoned every ounce of strength and shouted at the top of her lungs. "You're lying." The little girl's clear, tear-filled voice echoed throughout the banquet hall. Everyone froze. Sandy broke free from my embrace, her eyes red, pointing at Jenny on stage. "My dad isn't dead. You wicked grandma, why did you lie?" Sandy's wails struck every adult present like a resounding slap across the face. The entire banquet hall fell into a deathly silence. Jenny's face turned pale and green in turn, looking utterly dreadful. James abruptly stood up and strode quickly toward me. I didn't look at him. I just crouched down, pulled Sandy, who was sobbing so hard she could barely breathe, tightly into my arms, and covered her ears with my hands. "Sandy, don't be afraid. Mommy's here." I didn't want her to hear another single word of that filth. This farce ended with James forcibly taking us mother and daughter away. In the car, the atmosphere was oppressively heavy. Sandy cried herself to sleep in the back seat. I stared silently at the night scenery rushing past the window. James tried to speak several times, but my icy side profile shut him down each time. Back at the apartment, I carried Sandy out of the car and headed straight inside. "Lola." He followed me, grabbing my wrist at the doorway. "Let's talk." I shook off his hand, turned, and stared at him coldly. "What should we talk about? How about how your mother publicly humiliated me? Or the suspicion in your eyes just now? James, does this feel especially satisfying to you? Seeing me pointed at like a rat in the street, does that give you a sense of accomplishment?" My words cut like knives, each one piercing his heart. His face was pale, his lips moved, but in the end, only one sentence came out. "I'm sorry. That diagnosis. I didn't know. You didn't know? I laughed, my laughter filled with sorrow. Of course you didn't. In your heart, your mother will always be that noble, elegant lady who only ever had your best interests at heart. And I'm nothing but a disposable, second-rate accessory. Let me tell you this, James, from today onward, I have absolutely nothing to do with you or your family. First thing tomorrow morning, I'll take Sandy and leave this place. With that, I turned away from him and slammed the door shut. All his expressions were left behind, sealed off outside. That night, I lay awake all night. I knew I couldn't back down anymore. One step back meant a bottomless abyss. Jenny's shamelessness and viciousness had completely unleashed the ruthlessness deep within me. At first light, the very first thing I did was call Zara. Do me a favor. Look up someone for me, a doctor from the obstetrics and gynecology department at City Center Hospital 7 years ago. Her name was Lucy. Zara was incredibly efficient. She got back to me in less than half a day. Found it. This Lucy took a large sum of money from your mother-in-law 7 years ago to forge that infertility diagnosis for you. After the job was done, she immediately resigned and emigrated to Canada with her entire family. But it seems she hasn't been doing too well lately. Her husband's investments failed, leaving them deep in debt, and now they're selling off their property. As I listened to Zara's words, a cold gleam flashed in my eyes. Good. As long as someone has a weak spot, they're easy to deal with. Over the next few days, I didn't move out immediately as I had said I would. Instead, I became unusually calm. When James came to see Sandy, I treated him politely but distantly. That day, while he was helping Sandy with a puzzle, I casually mentioned, come to think of it, I have a distant relative who's also considering immigrating to Canada lately. I hear the cost of living there is pretty high. Oh, that reminds me, I had a friend who also immigrated there, I think. She's a doctor named Lucy. Do you know her? I asked casually while peeling an apple. I clearly saw James's hand, mid-puzzle, pause almost imperceptibly at the mention of Lucy. Jenny, watching TV on the nearby couch, flinched visibly, her eyes darting away. A cold smile touched my lips. Scared already? The real show has only just begun. I couldn't rely solely on others. While seeking revenge, I had to build myself up. I dug out my old college textbooks and revisited my major, food nutrition and culinary arts. I began studying various recipes, spending entire days in the kitchen. I photographed and filmed all the dishes I cooked, registered an account, and posted them on an online cooking competition platform. I never expected to win any prizes. I just wanted something to occupy my mind, to pull myself out of the quagmire of hatred for a while. What surprised me was that my work, thanks to its unique creativity and meticulous presentation, garnered a flood of likes and followers in just a few days. Watching that ever-rising follower count, I felt for the first time that my life might hold another possibility. Without relying on anyone but myself, I can still carve out my own world. A small flame ignited within my heart. Though faint, it shines bright enough to light my path ahead. James couldn't shake his doubts. Instead of confronting me again, he chose the most direct, and most hurtful, approach. He secretly took a strand of Sandy's hair and had a paternity test done. Zara was the one who told me about it. The appraisal center James found happened to be run by one of Zara's seniors. That jerk. He actually doesn't believe you. Zara raged over the phone. I, however, remained unusually calm. Let him be. Some things are better for him to discover on his own than for me to explain 1,000 times over. Those days waiting for the results must have been agonizing for James. He didn't come back to the apartment. But I knew he had his assistant deliver Sandy's favorite treats and toys every single day. He started texting me frequently, asking trivial questions. Was Sandy well behaved today? Has her cough cleared up? The forecast says it's going to get colder, remember to dress her warmly. I didn't reply to a single one. I can imagine the turmoil and conflict raging within him right now. He's beginning to recall every little moment we shared together. He's starting to doubt whether his flawless mother ever truly lied to him. He began to realize he might have missed something incredibly important. The day the DNA results came in, Zara immediately sent me the photos. 99.99%. Father-daughter relationship confirmed. Irrefutable proof. That afternoon, James arrived. He looked exhausted, with deep dark circles under his eyes and stubble sprouting on his chin. He said nothing, only gently placed the appraisal report before me. Then he looked at me with a broken gaze I'd never seen before. Lola. He called out my nickname from 7 years ago, his voice hoarse and strained. I'm sorry. I stared back at him, feeling nothing. It was too late. That apology had come 7 whole years too late. 7 years of youth, 7 years of pain, 7 years of longing. Can 3 words possibly make up for it? I ignored him, simply picked up the report, and walked straight into Jenny's room. She was applying a face mask at the time. Seeing what I held in my hand, her face instantly turned ashen. I slammed the paternity test report right in her face. See it clearly now? This is the bastard you've been talking about. Now, what else do you have to say? Jenny sat bolt upright in bed, startled by me. She grabbed the report and stared at the results, trembling all over. No, impossible, this must be forged, she insisted stubbornly. Just then, James walked in. He watched his mother's panicked expression, his eyes brimming with disappointment and anguish. He picked up the infertility diagnosis from 7 years ago that Jenny had tossed on the floor, his voice trembling slightly as he suppressed his anger. Mom, how are you going to explain this? Jenny stared at her son, realizing the truth was out, and resorted to throwing a tantrum. How am I supposed to explain? I was only doing it for your own good, she wailed, beating her chest and stamping her feet. This woman comes from an ordinary family, she's completely beneath you. She'll only hold you back. Everything I've done has been for the future of our Gu family. James closed his eyes in anguish. For the first time, he realized that the mother he had revered for over 30 years was actually such a selfish, vicious, and deceitful woman. Everything he had always believed in came crashing down in that instant. James and his mother had the most intense argument they'd ever had. I had no interest in listening. I took Sandy back to the room and closed the door. The shouting and crying outside were none of my concern. From that day on, James seemed like a different person. He no longer treated me with that aloof superiority, but instead became cautious, even humble. He began learning to care for Sandy, telling her stories and playing games with her. He would clumsily try to cook, though he always left the kitchen in a mess. He wanted to make up for his 7 years of absence this way. But the barrier in my heart remained insurmountable. After Jenny failed to confront me, she didn't let it go. She dared not confront me openly anymore, so she began sabotaging me behind my back. I made it all the way to the finals in the culinary competition. I planned to use the prize money, along with some of my own savings, to open a small private dining restaurant. But just as I'd found the perfect shop and was ready to sign the lease, the landlord suddenly changed his mind and said he wouldn't rent it after all. This happened with several places in a row. I could tell with my toes that Jenny was behind it. She leveraged the Gu family's connections to drive me into a corner, making me realize that without her son, I was nothing. At the same time, she began pressuring James and Ivy to marry as soon as possible. Ivy began showing up at the apartment more often, acting like the future mistress of the house and bossing me around. Lola, James is a public figure after all. If word gets out about your ambiguous relationship with him, it won't be good for his reputation. Young lady, you do well to be a little more charming and not so greedy. Her words were polite, yet brimming with warning. Looking at this spoiled rich girl, I found her utterly laughable. She thought I was her enemy. She had no idea that the one truly pulling the strings was her future, kind and gentle mother-in-law. The conflict between James and Jenny also erupted completely because of Ivy's interference. He made it clear to Jenny that he would not marry Ivy. Jenny was so furious she nearly had a heart attack, pointing her finger at his nose and berating him for his disloyalty. "You'd abandon your own mother for that vixen. Mark my words, James. As long as I live, that woman will never set foot in the Gu family home again." The relationship between mother and son had reached a freezing point. After being repeatedly snubbed by James, Ivy finally grasped the gravity of the situation. She shed her socialite facade and began plotting against me behind James' back. She hired a few thugs to cause trouble in the neighborhood where I was preparing to open my restaurant. They spread rumors that my food was unsanitary and had killed people. Before long, I became notorious in that area. With wolves ahead and tigers behind, my situation grew dire once more. But I wasn't afraid. Because this time I wasn't alone. Zara pulled every string she had to finally connect me with that doctor in Canada, Lucy. I added her contact information and sent her my first message. "Lucy, I hope you're doing well." She didn't reply for a long time. I wasn't in a hurry. I knew she'd seen it. That was enough. I started sending her a photo of Sandy every day, cute ones, smiling ones, sleeping ones. Sometimes, I'll add a note, "This is my daughter, Sandy. She's 6 years old, healthy, and adorable." I don't know if you have children, but I imagine every mother wants her child to live in the sunshine, not burdened by her sins. I didn't threaten her or hurl insults. I was simply stating a fact. A truth she had twisted with her own hands for 7 years. Finally, late one night, she replied to me. Just one word. "Speak." I immediately initiated a video call. On the other end of the screen sat a haggard middle-aged woman, the sparkle in her eyes long since worn away by life. She looked at me, her expression complex. "What do you want?" I cut straight to the point, "I want." She fell silent for a long time, then gave a bitter smile. "Do you really think a mere doctor like me would dare to cross someone like the Gu family? But you did it anyway." I looked at her, enunciating each word deliberately. "For money, you destroyed a woman's lifelong innocence and shattered the happiness a family should have known." My words seemed to sting her. She retorted passionately, "So what? I'm not doing well either. My husband went bankrupt, and I can barely afford my daughter's tuition. This is karma, are you satisfied now?" Seeing her on the verge of breaking down, my tone softened. "I'm not here to hold you accountable. I just want to ask you to do me one last favor. Tell me everything that happened back then, every detail. I'll give you enough money to get you through this crisis." She froze, staring at me in disbelief. "What did you say?" "I'll pay you to testify on my behalf." "Do you still have those old transfer records?" She nodded instinctively. "Excellent." I smiled. "Get ready. My lawyer will contact you in a few days." After ending the video call, I exhaled a long breath. I knew I had one. I shared the news with James. I didn't embellish anything, I simply sent him a text message with Lucy's contact details and her agreement to testify via video. Then, I also included screenshots of the bank transaction records showing Jenny's transfer to Lucy that year. Zara had to use hacking techniques to obtain them. The evidence was irrefutable and indisputable. I couldn't imagine how James felt when he saw these things. It must have felt like a bolt from the blue. The mother he had always protected and honored had been deceiving him all along, manipulating his entire life. The 7 years he and I had missed out on. The 7 years his daughter had been deprived of a father's love. All because of his mother's selfish, vicious lie. This pain and regret would take him a lifetime to atone for. James stormed back to the Gu family mansion like a madman. He slammed all the evidence I'd sent him down in front of Jenny. "Why?" His eyes reddened, like a cornered beast enraged, as he hurled a heart-wrenching accusation at his mother. "Why did you do this?" Jenny, staring at the undeniable evidence, finally broke down. She stopped arguing and stopped throwing tantrums, instead clinging to James's legs as she wept bitterly. James, I was wrong. I was truly wrong. But I did all this because I love you so much. I can't stand by and watch you be held back by a woman who has nothing. I can't let the Gu family bloodline be tainted by ordinary genes. Her tearful plea sounded nothing but utterly ironic and revolting to James. He pushed her away, his eyes filled with an unprecedented coldness and disappointment. Your love is too heavy, too selfish, I can't bear it. Right in front of Jenny, he called his assistant. Effective immediately, freeze all of Mrs. James' credit cards and revoke her management rights over every company under her name. Without my permission, she is not to leave the estate. This was the first time James had bared his fangs at his mother, who had always ruled with an iron fist. After handling all of this, he came to see me. It was a rainy night. Exactly like that rainy night 7 years ago when I dragged my suitcase away from the Gu residence. He stood beneath the apartment building without an umbrella, letting the cold rain soak his expensive suit through and through. He looked utterly bedraggled, his hair plastered wetly to his forehead, stripped of his usual air of superiority. He stood there, gazing up at my window. I watched him impassively from behind the curtains. He saw me. He bowed deeply toward me. Then, in a hoarse voice, he shouted through the curtain of rain. Lola, I'm sorry. I know it's too late for me to say anything now. But I beg you, please give me one more chance, okay? Let me make it up to you, make it up to Sandy. His voice was thick with sobs and regret. Watching his humble figure in the rain, my heart was filled with mixed emotions. Was there satisfaction? Perhaps a little. But more than that, there was endless sorrow. If only I'd known then what I know now. Some wounds, once inflicted, can never be mended. Some cracks, once formed, can never be repaired. I drew the curtains, shutting out all his regrets. I didn't open the door. Nor did I respond. This is my final, most resolute farewell to him, to that past of ours, buried alive by his own mother. After weathering this immense storm, life has finally begun to return to calm. Jenny fell completely ill due to her son's estrangement and the gossip circulating in society, leaving her utterly disgraced among the upper-class women. Ivy, unable to endure James's emotional abuse, took the initiative to call off the engagement. James no longer resorted to any forceful tactics to pressure me. He simply stood by us, mother and daughter, as a father and a devoted admirer, silently watching over us. When I faced difficulties finding a shop, he would discreetly help resolve them. Whenever Sandy missed him, he would appear before her without fail. When I'm so absorbed in perfecting dishes that I forget to eat, he quietly orders takeout for me. He sheds all his sharp edges and becomes gentle and patient. With Zara's help, my private dining restaurant finally opened successfully. The shop isn't big, but it's cozy. Thanks to my unique skills and authentic ingredients, business quickly boomed, even attracting several food bloggers to visit. Every day I'm busy, preparing ingredients, serving customers, and calculating the day's revenue. I'm exhausted, but deeply fulfilled. I can finally provide a stable home for Sandy and myself with my own 2 hands. I'm no longer the Lola who needed to depend on anyone else. I am my own rock. James became my restaurant's most loyal customer. He came almost every day. When things weren't busy, he'd sit in the corner, quietly watching me work. When things get busy, he'll roll up his sleeves and help me wash dishes or prepare vegetables. That CEO Gu, who once wouldn't even bother to steady a soy sauce bottle if it tipped over, now willingly does these little chores for me. Zara always whispers in my ear, Lola, give him one more chance. You can tell he's truly sorry. Each time, I just smile and say nothing. I don't know. The ice in my heart is too thick, too hard, the wound runs too deep. I need time. Sandy became the perfect mediator between us. She'd take my hand and pull James's hand. Mommy, Daddy says he knows he was wrong. Please forgive him. The teacher says that admitting mistakes and making amends still makes you a good kid. Looking at my daughter's innocent face, my heart melted little by little. That day was a sunny afternoon. The restaurant was empty. I was tending to the plants I'd grown in the courtyard. James walked over and stood behind me. Lola. I didn't turn around. From behind me, he conjured a ring as if by magic. It wasn't some huge diamond ring, but a simple plain band. I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness right now. But may I ask you, could you give me a chance to keep pursuing you? I want to spend the rest of my life making up for the 7 years we lost. The sun was shining brightly, and the breeze was gentle. I saw the tension and anticipation in his eyes, and noticed a few strands of white hair that had appeared at his temples without my knowing when. Suddenly, I felt at peace. Perhaps one must always look forward. For Sandy, and for myself. I reached out my hand toward him and flashed a smile, a radiant smile I hadn't shown in 7 years.